Dr. Carl Jung said, "The world will ask you who you are, and if you don't know, the world will tell you," which is why I make these videos from some beautiful wilderness areas, because it's where I feel closest to nature, closest to being my genuine self, and where I think some of the answers to some of the world's problems and mysteries lie. There's a perfection here which can't be imitated, and I think it's where I feel closest to nature, which I think has a lot of solutions to the problems that we currently face, which is going to kind of dominate the theme of the videos I'm making from now on, because as I've said before, I think the two biggest problems the world faces at the moment is the separation from ourselves, otherwise known as the fundamental contradiction, when we're not really being genuine to who we're meant to be in this world, and the separation from an intelligent creator, a divine source. So over time you're going to see me refer more and more to how I think understanding those two contradictions, separation from self, separation from a divine source, understanding those is going to help a lot of us improve our health. So I'm currently filming this from a beautiful lake in the Queensland outback. Got down here early today to try and beat the flies. I don't know what time their bus arrives today, but hopefully I'm here before them. And remember, I'm going to use these videos I make to explore the concept whether quantum physics and mitochondrial function will help us confirm those two primary problems I think we're facing and give us the solutions. Remember, mitochondria, which have been around for about 3 billion years and were created by an endosymbiotic process where one bacteria consumed another one and went on to become either prokaryotes, which are essentially unchanged bacteria, or eukaryotes, which became plants, fungi and animals, work by converting the energy of the sun and food into ATP, which is the energy currency that our body runs on. So they're basically transforming energy, not creating energy. They transform the electromagnetic energy of the sun and the chemical energy of food into the chemical energy of ATP. And they do that with the assistance of two miraculous substances, one of which is melatonin, which is unchanged in 2 billion years and is contained in all living organisms, and also vitamin D, another miraculous substance which has been around for 1 billion years according to science. And once you start to understand how these molecules work in terms of quantum physics and mitochondrial energy production, then, as they say, you can't unsee what you've seen. So today I'm going to talk about ashwagandha, one of my two favourite herbs. I made that video on astragalus a few weeks ago and its benefits. Ashwagandha is my other favourite herb, I suppose up there with turmeric, all three of which I'm growing at my home now in my herb gardens. But before I continue about the remarkable benefits of ashwagandha, otherwise known as withania, I have to get the medical disclaimer out of the way. Remember, I continue to be suspended for over 6 years now in nutritional environmental medicine. I'm only permitted to work as a specialist in a public hospital, So none of what I talk about today should be considered as medical or health advice. I create these videos purely for educational and entertainment purposes, and because I quite readily acknowledge, going the wrong way, well, there is no right way, quite readily acknowledge that I'm not very entertaining. It's one of the reasons, the other reasons that I film these videos in these beautiful wilderness areas. So none of this replaces consultation with your own health or medical advisor. And if you have any questions about things I talk about in these videos, certainly does not replace consultation with those providers. And the other thing, of course, is that because I'm a crazy biking Kiwi who likes getting in icy cold mountain lakes and hot saunas, practicing contrast therapy or hydrotherapy, or building my resilience through hormetic principles, hormesis being building the strength of the body and mind by challenging it with uncomfortable situations, doesn't mean anybody else should do it with adequate training in those principles by somebody who has experience and expertise in those areas. As usual, I'll add screenshots of the medical and scientific studies that I get this information from at the end of the video. I'll also, throughout the video, include quotes from those studies. And you'll notice that as I make these videos, I'm going to start introducing interesting terms to make sure everybody understands and we're on the same page. Things like stress-activated nutrients. Stress-activated nutrients, in fact, if you go back a few years to when I made that video in Sedona, Arizona, where I was spending time with the Apache, learning about how they lived their lives and the traditional medicines they used. I learned about stress-activated nutrients from them, where they would choose the plants which survived in challenging circumstances, because the plants would develop these nutrients to help them survive under extreme conditions, and those nutrients gave us extra resilience. Adaptogens also is a term I'll use a lot, and adaptogens are phytochemicals which, if our physiological systems are in excess, they reduce them. If our physiological systems are in deficiency, they will increase them. So basically restoring our physiological systems to an equilibrium state. Intelligent design is another term I'll use a lot, which is a term we learnt from our friend Dr. Roby Mitchell, aka Dr. Fit, where we recognise that the body works together as a whole rather than being individual organs, and therefore treatments which have a comprehensive effect on the whole body often work better than single molecules designed for single receptors. And also the term, which I haven't really used before in my videos, is rasayana. Rasayana is an Ayurvedic term, plants and herbs which are involved in rejuvenation and longevity. Rasa being a word for essence, and ayana a word for journey. So essentially, Rasayana is about the essential journey. It involves increasing the prana in our body, which is kind of translates to life force, and I think can be measured by the biophoton, which is the light our bodies produce. The biophoton irradiance from our body. The higher our prana, the higher our life force, the brighter will be our biophoton release from our body. And remember, biophotons are produced by our mitochondria, of which we have 1 quadrillion in our body. And mitochondria, just to go over it again, produce ATP, they produce light as biophotons, they produce heat, they produce water, and they produce pollution in speech marks, which we're going to talk about today, including carbon dioxide and free radicals like superoxide ions. But we remember that even though we call them pollution, they do, like everything, have a role in the body. Oh, and just so you're aware, I do have to change the perspective on these videos quite a bit, because this is the Australian outback and I'm beside a lake which has a lot of snakes, including brown snakes and freshwater crocodiles. So just have to be a little bit aware of where I'm actually walking and concentrate on a little bit of that as well as what I'm talking about, which actually I'm going to head up this hill now for a change and have a look at the perspective from above. But while I walk up this hill, let's talk a little bit about Ashwagandha, otherwise known as Withania somnifera, otherwise known as Indian winter cherry, which, as I said, is in my top 3 favourite herbs that I personally use, including astragalus and turmeric. It's been around for, well, it's been around for a long time, but it's been used in traditional Indian medicine, Ayurveda, for over 3,000 years, where it's known as a rasayana or an adaptogen. Both its roots and leaves have health benefits, although usually it's the root which is mainly used. And of course, remembering that best time to harvest a plant's roots is during winter, when it concentrates less on producing fruit or leaves and stores its medicinal compounds in its roots. Ashwagandha traditionally used to strengthen the nervous system, because it has actually been shown to be one of the herbs which is able to cross the blood-brain this might have been a bad idea. Cross the blood-brain barrier and penetrate into the neurons of the brain. Blood-brain barrier is a layer of cells in the vascular system which prevent toxins from entering the brain. And as you see when we go through the benefits of ashwagandha, the research benefits, so from the scientific studies, you'll see why it's called a multi-targeted therapy, or has relevance to the intelligent design concept, because it has beneficial effects on just about every organ in the body. So let's start at the top of the body and work our way down, looking at some of the known benefits, proven benefits. And of course I'll put the studies at the end of the video for us, so anybody wants to read further. So let's start with the brain, which is really where its focus of its traditional use. And one of the big benefits of ashwagandha is improved sleep, which seems to be at this stage independent of melatonin release, and may actually work more by improving sleep. Oh, hello. Improving sleep by reducing cortisol and stress. It's been shown to improve memory, Wow, look at that. If it was worth it. It improves executive function, also been shown to help with neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease and neuropsychiatric disorders. It reduces amyloid in the brain, and you remember we discussed amyloid a couple of weeks ago, where it turns out that amyloid is actually antiviral and has a huge part to play in how heat shock proteins start improving damaged proteins in the brain, until of course there's too much damage and the heat shock proteins instead start to, wow, that's fantastic, start to kill off those cells, clear them out, clean house, rather than try and repair them by refolding the damaged proteins. Ashwagandha has also been shown to help regulate the heat shock proteins, so good to combine with saunas, optimizing heat shock proteins benefit and clearing out, well, not clearing out, but refolding the damaged proteins. Okay, down from the head, next we get to the thyroid gland in the neck, which is another well-known benefit of ashwagandha with anemia, and it's definitely been shown to reduce TSH in people with subclinical hypothyroidism. In fact, I'll talk about that a little bit more when we talk about potential contradictions to the use of ashwagandha, but certainly improves thyroid function as evidenced by a reduction in TSH. TSH is the hormone which is created by our brain to tell our thyroid gland how hard to work. So the higher the TSH is, the less well the thyroid is working. Also increases T3 and T4, which are the hormones the thyroid releases. And as we know from previous discussions, one of the benefits of thyroid hormone is helping shovel food as a source of energy into our mitochondria to produce ATP. Down from the thyroid next we hit the lungs. Definitely been shown to improve respiratory function in people with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. There's also benefits to the heart, reduces cholesterol damage, abnormal cholesterol, also has a cardioprotective effect during periods of low oxygen supply to the heart. There are metabolic benefits, certainly been shown to help reduce blood sugar levels when they're high, helps with weight loss and improves body composition. So maybe your weight doesn't increase, but you increase your muscle mass and decrease your fat density. Quick pause while I head down the hill. A lot easier to climb up a hill than go down it. But as you'll see soon, I'm actually in a few months' time leaving to climb a big mountain in Europe, so you'll get some cool videos from there. And the other exciting thing I'm going to be talking about today is not just the benefits of ashwagandha, but also how it manifests those benefits from a scientific basis. And that's a really exciting thing, because I'm going to be talking about brain-derived neurotropic factor and a sirtuin protein called SIRT1. If you don't know anything about those, then stay towards the end of the video where I discuss them, because it's really the crazy part where we can look at how these stress-activated nutrients, the intelligent design of this herb, how it interacts with mitochondria and its role in the quantum physics of the mitochondria, which again kind of makes me think that if some of these multi-system effects of these herbs helps through molecules in the body to increase quantum tunneling, increase quantum entanglement, and it's been doing so for thousands of years, billions of years. That's pretty impressive, and would suggest that perhaps, just perhaps, all of this incredible beauty is not a sheer accident derived from sea minerals and amorphous ocean goop, and did actually have an intelligent creator. Right, let's keep going a bit faster because my friends the flies are starting to arrive, and I've just eaten far too many of them over the last few months to want to have any more interactions with them. Next one is the adrenals, which is really important. It's well-known benefit of ashwagandha because it's an adaptogen, which means it normalizes or optimizes cortisol levels. Cortisol is a stress hormone released from your adrenal gland. Now, you don't want too much cortisol from stress, but nor do you want to burn your adrenal glands out and not produce enough. So withania is very good at moderating and optimizing adrenal function, so your cortisol levels kind of remain within the beneficial range rather than going to extremes. Now that's particularly important for me because I'm down here this morning making the video because I'm working an evening shift in the emergency department tonight, which is not going to finish till at least midnight. So shift workers are particularly exposed to stress problems, adrenal problems, because of the blue light exposure you get working in the evening. And also, my cortisol levels from my adrenal gland are meant to be very low in the evening because I'm resting, getting ready for sleep. My melatonin levels are just starting to be released from my pineal gland and dump into my cerebrospinal fluid to help me get to sleep. But of course, I'm going to be in a situation where I'm exposed to blue light, which is going to be reducing or shutting down my melatonin release, and it's also going to be stressing my adrenal gland. So rather than my cortisol level being low, and if you look at the release of cortisol during the day, it's highest early in the morning after we wake up, and then it slowly decreases throughout the day so we can get to sleep, because cortisol is a stress hormone, so you're not going to sleep very well when your stress hormone is high. Well, what am I going to do about that? Well, I'm going to be wearing my blue light blocking glasses in the evening, so my retina gets exposed to less blue light. And I'm also going to be taking my ashwagandha to act as an adaptogen. Keeping going down the body, we've got the sex organs, or the gonads, where certainly improves fertility by, it's been shown to increase semen volume, sperm count, sperm motility. It increases testosterone levels in men and also DHEA levels in men, which certainly helps with the next benefit, which is the benefits to muscles, where there's been shown to be increased athletic performance, improved muscle strength, watching out for spiders, increased vertical jump, I wish I'd known that when I was playing basketball, increased VO2 max. VO2 max is the maximum amount of oxygen we can utilize during exercise, and as we've seen on the whiteboard recently, oxygen's the terminal electron acceptor for the electron transport chain in the mitochondria to allow us to produce ATP for energy. Also been shown to reduce muscle fatigue. And finally, which I find very interesting, let's look at the immune system. It's definitely shown to be antiviral. A lot of research done during a recent viral pandemic on the use of ashwagandha, and it found it did have a role in stopping the spike protein from attaching to the ACE2 receptor, which is how the virus would enter the cells to replicate. Of course, if you can't get a virus into a cell, it can't replicate it because it uses our proteins inside our cells to do its own replication. It's also been shown to be antifungal. There's an anti-candida effect and also helps reduce the biofilms that Candida produces. And again, we've discussed how the fungal organisms cover themselves in a mucousy biofilm to protect themselves from the immune system. And ashwagandha also increases natural killer cells in the body to optimize our immune function. Let's have a look now at some scientific explanations how ashwagandha actually has its effect at a molecular level, particularly in the brain. Now, two specific molecules which I really like discussing are brain-derived neurotrophic factor, otherwise known as BDNF, which is made in the neurons of the brain, and SIRT1, which is a sirtuin protein, which is made in the nucleus of cells. So let's start with BDNF. So it's made in the neurons of the brain, and it's involved in growth and development of neurons and synapses. So a neuron is a brain cell, but brain cells need to communicate with each other. And to do that, they use synapses, which are an extension of the neuron, like a long arm. That's kind of my arms, an axon from my body, which is the neuron. Neurons work via electrical energy, and they send an action potential down the axon, down its limb, to the next neuron, or the next neuron's axon, where they join. But where they join, there's a gap, and that gap's called a synapse. And chemicals, particularly neurotransmitters, are released into that gap. And they then cause the action potential in the next neuron. So you get an electrical impulse followed by a chemical release into the synapse, which then triggers an electrical impulse in the next neuron, and that's how information is passed through brain cells. Now, one of the things that ashwagandha does is it increases synaptic plasticity. That's kind of the synapses being involved in thinking and processing and memory in particular. And that plasticity will either increase or decrease those memories. So memories we want to keep around for a long time. Other memories we might not want to. Kind of why I forget some things as well that I learn, that I got to study continuously because I haven't got enough synaptic plasticity. So that's what BDNF is involved in. And science has shown that ashwagandha increases BDNF levels. Now, BDNF is also involved in energy production in the brain, and that's largely through its effects on mitochondrial bioenergetics. So again, ashwagandha shown to improve mitochondrial function of the brain by releasing or increasing the release of BDNF. The other protein I want to talk about is an enzyme called SIRT1, which is one of many enzymes from a family of proteins called sirtuins. Now, sirtuins are made in the nucleus of the cell and are known to be involved in lifespan and longevity. And they work by removing an acetyl group from other proteins in a process called deacetylation. And that deacetylation, that removal of that acetyl group from other proteins, alters the function of that protein. And SIRT1 in particular, the one with most research, is involved in mitochondrial regulation and repair, and that's how it's thought it has its role in extending lifespan. Now, what we know is that sirtuins and SIRT1 are ancient proteins. They're present in all kingdoms of life, including bacteria. So they've been around for billions of years. And here's the really cool bit. Here's the bit which I think is related to where we all came from, is that SIRT1, which has been around for billions of years because it's present in bacteria, is intimately involved in NAD, production and function in the mitochondria. Now remember from our whiteboard sessions from a couple of weeks ago, NAD accepts electrons in the mitochondria. So we get electrons from food. Food is just a source of electrons to our mitochondria produce energy. The rest of food's effects are kind of a byproduct of providing those electrons to our mitochondria. Because we ain't got any electrons in our mitochondria, we haven't got any energy. And remember, cyanide gas, which stops electron flow in the mitochondria, causes death within 3 seconds. Hold your breath for 3 minutes. Stop your electron flow for 3 seconds and you're in trouble. And so remember that food gets converted into glucose and then pyruvate, which enters the mitochondria, then converted into acetyl-CoA. Acetyl-CoA then, as well as going on to form melatonin, there's the intelligent design of the body for you, the multifunctionality of these things. Acetyl-CoA then passes the electrons to NAD and FAD. And that NAD then helps those electrons move along the electron transport chain in the mitochondria, like passing a rugby ball along a backline. Each time those electrons move along the respiratory transport chain, they pump hydrogen molecules from the matrix in the mitochondria across the inner mitochondrial membrane to form the proton gradient, which then produces ATP once those proteins burst back through the inner mitochondrial membrane to spin ATPase, as we've discussed before. Now, let's have a look at the role of SIRT1 and NAD, because this is super cool. And it basically regulates NAD function. So that means if NAD is high, SIRT1 is high. If NAD is low, SIRT1 is low. And the best way of thinking about that, from my perspective, is thinking about a Formula One race car driver in a pit stop. Now you want the Formula Car race driver to press the accelerator at the right time. Don't want him or her sitting there in the pit stop, revving the accelerator, using up all the gas, but going nowhere. When you're out on the track, want to press the accelerator and get lots of speed. So the pit stop crew basically help the driver decide when to push the accelerator and burn gas, and when not to burn the accelerator and just idle. And that's what SIRT1 does for NAD. So it matches energy. Here's the key. It matches energy production from the mitochondria with demand. SIRT1 helps modulate NAD so it regulates energy production according to demand from the mitochondria. How cool is that? So the big question then is, what increases SIRT1? What optimizes SIRT1? Well, we know that SIRT1 is optimized by fasting. We know, of course, it's optimized by ashwagandha. It's optimized by resveratrol. It's optimized by berberine. It's optimized by cacao. So if that's the case, what then decreases? Where do we find abnormally low SIRT1 levels? Well, it's low in cancer. It's low in heart disease. It's low in diabetes. So that's why I've chosen to incorporate intermittent fasting and ashwagandha in my daily health program. So do you want to know what excites me these days? It's able to get up in the morning and contemplate the hypothesis that science and spirituality are not opposing forces. They're complementary. They add to each other. I don't care if it's the concept of creating something from nothing, of creating life itself, of 3 billion year old mitochondria, of 2 billion year old melatonin, of 1 billion year old vitamin D, of mitochondria themselves, of SIRT1, of BDNF, of NAD, quantum tunneling, of quantum entanglement. Putting it all together is what gets me out of bed with energy and excitement in the morning. All right, as you said, I'm cheating because it's now not sunrise in the morning anymore. It's now sunset. But of course, Greg being Greg with a camera, sometimes technology doesn't work and my big fingers didn't press the right button to record some of the video, particularly about what increases CERT1. So I've come out in the evening to finish off the filming and just marvel with this incredible sunset, the red light, the infrared light, which is just communicating with my mitochondria and my pineal gland to start releasing the melatonin, which I started creating in the pineal gland and the melatonin this morning with the signal of the red light from the sunrise. There are, of course, some precautions one has to think about with the use of any herbal product, any medicine. So its use should be discussed with your healthcare practitioner. But here's certainly some precautions. One, there have been a few reports of liver inflammation caused by the use of ashwagandha. It was self-limiting and resolved when it went away. But nonetheless, that's something you should discuss with your healthcare practitioner. Secondly, people with high thyroid function, hyperthyroidism, should be probably not use ashwagandha because it can improve, because it increases thyroid function. And if you're already hyperthyroid, that would be something you'd want to discuss with your doctor or healthcare practitioner. And the third one is, what's the third one? We've got liver inflammation, we've got hyperthyroidism. Oh, and the other one is because it does increase testosterone levels in men, there is a suggestion that men who have prostate cancer, this is a contentious issue, but men with prostate cancer or past history of prostate cancer might not want to increase their testosterone levels. So again, that should always be discussed with your doctor before starting on a herb like ashwagandha. Oh, and one last thing to remember. Where does the name come from? Ashwa in Sanskrit means smells like. Gandha in Sanskrit, it's kind of means wet or horse. So ashwagandha basically means the roots of ashwagandha smell like wet horse. So just remember that. Capsules are good. Putting it, that straight ashwagandha powder into your daily smoothie, you're drinking the root of something which tastes like wet horse. Remember that warning. I warned you. As you know, I like to finish each video with an inspiring quote for myself, just for me. And I've been spending a lot of time studying spiritual texts, all kinds of spiritual texts. And this is a quote which really kind of had a profound effect on me. It's from a 3-volume analysis of the Bhagavad Gita. It says, quote, "We struggle, and at the last point, the divine comes and helps us. Only when we struggle can he help. Sometimes the lamp in our hearts is lit by God, but we don't want it. We aren't ready for it. But when we struggle and become sensitive, then this great help comes. Grace comes from being grace-worthy, but grace comes." Right, that's enough for me for this week because the flies have arrived in force. And just remember, no matter how dark it gets, how far you fall, or how much it hurts, you are never out of the fight. Don't give up. Peace and love from me. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. I need some more synaptic plasticity. Need to up my dose of ashwagandha. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for sharing the video if you think it's worthwhile information. And I'll see you next week. Peace and love.
Let's take a holiday. Let's swim.